You brought up Mercedes a second ago, and I just think it's interesting because we were talking about them a few weeks ago, and things were looking really good. And then all of a sudden, they had the issues in Monaco, and then they had the issues in Spain. And it's some of it, there have been a few driver mistakes, but there are also the reliability issues. When you look at them this weekend in Montreal, what's your confidence level that they will regain form, that they will get back to where they were a month ago?
I think it's likely, because actually this race turned out to be a bit of a breakthrough one for them last year. And there were a couple of reasons for that. One is that they brought a pretty big update. Not entirely sure what they've got planned for this weekend, but they brought a fairly big one. But it was also because this circuit, it only really has one type of corner, which is slow speed corners. So for cars which really struggle across a variety of corners, like the Mercedes, the Ferrari is another one, a circuit like Montreal is actually quite a good place to set up the car. What's more, it's Montreal, it's in Canada, weather tends to be a bit cooler. We've seen certainly last year, but it's also rolled into this season as well, that when the temperature goes up, the Mercedes loses some of its performance, certainly struggles over longer runs to keep the tyres in the right window. So I would say this is, a good opportunity for them to steady the ship. But you could say that about a number of teams going into this weekend. We never write off McLaren at this stage. They clearly have the best all-round car. With Max Verstappen in the mood that he's in, that we've talked about, you're not going to write off at least one of the Red Bulls. And then again, the same theory that because it's all slow-speed corners, that could help Mercedes. Well, the last time we had that was in Monaco. Okay, very different track in many respects, but in terms of setting up the car, again, it's just with one focus on slow-speed corners. That's where Ferrari excelled all of a sudden out of nowhere. So, yeah, it's a circuit where I think Mercedes will be competitive, but they're going to have some tough competition.
Overall, what kind of racing do you think we're going to get this weekend? Forecast from my meteorology skills, which early on in my career, fun fact, I was a weather person for a TV station.
Really?
Don't ask how that happened, but it did. The forecast of this weekend is a little questionable. For people in my portion of the world, we're talking maybe high 60s, low 70s. That would be mid to high teens, because math. I'm super good at it. Also, I have it on my phone. There is also a chance for rain, maybe rain on Saturday. Sunday looks better, but the days around it are also filled with rain. So this is a situation that could change by the hour. Maybe there's rain, maybe there's not. When you look at the weather possibilities, you look at the temperature, and you just look at the track, what kind of racing do you think we're going to get?
Well, all of that points to exciting racing. I mean, that's what we had last year. It was a fantastic race. I remember last year, it would have been on the Saturday morning, I think, perhaps a Friday morning. All of a sudden, there was just a hailstorm out of nowhere. The cars weren't on track at the time, but there was a hailstorm that it must have been the Friday, actually, because the police then started telling some of the race fans on their way to the circuit to turn around and go home because there wasn't going to be any running. There was. I mean, that's how unpredictable it is, where the local authorities can't even tell you whether there's going to be cars on track or the whole thing's been cancelled. So, yeah, it's it all kind of just breeds excitement, breeds unpredictability. And that's the one thing that Montreal consistently delivers, I think, in Formula One. It is one of those circuits where not only do you have all this randomness going on, you have overtaking opportunities, because it is a slightly different circuit to others, long straights, slow corners, not much else. It can throw up a random result. So all of that, I hope, leads to an exciting race, because so far this season, I mean, it's been good. It's been competitive, at least between the McLaren drivers, with Max Verstappen thrown in every now and again. But the racing, let's be honest, hasn't been great. Mm-hmm. And so if it's going to turn a corner, I think it could be this weekend in Canada.
It's also been a weird few weeks in terms of strategy, because we had the Monaco race where there was the mandatory 2-stop situation and the holding teams up and the drawing people in. And then in Spain, it was 2 stops versus 3. And that whole situation, how that played out. What do you think of the potential tire situation versus strategy situation that this weekend? How is that going to differ from what we've seen the last couple of weeks?
It probably will be more straightforward in that regard, but, with a likely 1 stop. But Canada kind of does funny things to the tires every now and again. The drivers get graining when the circuit has had a lot of rain and, the rubber hasn't laid down on it. And so you can all of a sudden get tire phenomenons where you do get stuck between a 1 and a 2 stop. And that's exactly the kind of racing that we want, where there's more than one option. That's why Spain was so good, because, up until the safety car at the end, which kind of threw all sorts of spanners in the works, the excitement was coming from the fact that Max was attacking on a 3-stop. Could he make that work? Could he push McLaren into any mistakes? Didn't actually play out that way in the end, but, just having that kind of variability is what makes good racing in Formula One at the moment. But no, I would rely more on just, the weather, the overtaking opportunities, the long straights, the DRS zones to provide the action at Montreal than the tyres themselves. But of course, you do need that element of degradation. And we do have you've got the C6 compound back, which is the softest one that Pirelli has, which could lead to that degradation that all of a sudden opens up a few opportunities for teams to take gambles on strategies.
I want to say, I want to ask who this strategy with this track favors, and I want to be like, everyone except for McLaren. Give me somebody else besides McLaren, because let's just again live in a world where they have the best car, and we're going to put them in the conversation for all things. So take out those two drivers. Who should I be watching this weekend?
Yeah, well, I mean, last year, to perhaps a hint of optimism for people that don't want to see another McLaren victory, McLaren messed up the strategy, and that was why Norris wasn't the winner at the end of the race. So it is possible that even the best teams, the best drilled teams, when you've got a bit of rain in the air, you can make those mistakes and have something else play out. But like I said, I think Ferrari could be stronger than perhaps they have been at various other races, just because you dial that car into the low speed corners. You don't really have to worry about finding that balance between low speed and high speed, which is what McLaren is so good at. What's so impressive about that car, and the fact that it's so stable through long duration corners like we had in Spain, the corners which are really hard to get right. Montreal's a bit different. It's kind of throw the car in, let it stick, get out of the corner, carry as much speed as you can onto the following straight. That kind of opens up a few opportunities, I think, for teams like Ferrari and Mercedes to get in the mix.
I do want to remind the people of our very tight championship situation, our podium recap situation. I lead the way with 9 whole points. You, sir, have 7. A week ago, 2 weeks ago now, in Spain, we predicted the exact same podium. I'm going to write mine down first.
Okay.
Because I don't want there to be any confusion that I'm like copying you. Mine are written down. Nate has 5 points, by the way. Nate has also, I think, skipped at least 1 week in there.
He did skip 1 week. Possibly. That's correct. Yeah.
To recap, Nate, who graced us with his presence for all of like 20 minutes, he picked Max as the winner, Oscar second, Lando third. I really genuinely love his reasons for picking Max first, because he's like, Max, screw it. I'm just going to go for it. And I don't necessarily think he's wrong. What are you going with here?
Right. Okay. So I'm going to stick with a theme of 2 McLarens and a Red Bull. It would be no surprise which Red Bull it is. I'm going to go third place, Oscar Piastri. Third place, Oscar Piastri. Second place, Max Verstappen. First place, Lando Norris. I'm judging by the surprise in your initial reaction and the look on your face that that's not the same as yours this week.
That is not the same. It's the same 3.
Just okay. No surprise.
I just flipped the order. I also have Max in second, but I said this a few weeks ago. I'm going to keep riding the Oscar train, like keep going with the guy that brought you here. So in my world, Oscar wins, Max finishes second, and Lando is third.
That's a solid prediction, I think. I mean, I
don't think any one of us can go wrong.
Yeah.
With those predictions.
But I mean, that's where my head is, your prediction, but I didn't want to end up on the same prediction as you.
I like it.
So I went with a little bit, I wouldn't say my heart, but also just like that feeling that perhaps Lando's going to make something happen again, in the same way he did in Monaco. Again, because I said there are those like not obvious similarities between Monaco and Canada, but there are some in that you set up a car in a certain way. I think that might just play into Lando's hands again. And it's really been the high-speed corners where he's been lacking to Oscar. So maybe that's enough.
I hope we're all wrong. I hope we don't get a single point. I hope we're all wrong. I hope it's utter chaos and the most exciting race of the season, because strategy is all in place. Let's just, exactly, that's what I'm hoping for.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.